Joe Biden, now the 46th president of the United States, has a full plate in front of him.
Afghanistan has been the heart of American military power.
In a clear warning to China, India's military has now taken control of the country for 1 year.
It says that it's likely to miss by around.
What was happening inside the virology lab in Wuhan?
One ship was able to freeze global trade.
We want love, we want peace, we want equality!
There are
a traditional recipe, and it's really very delicious.
WION, now available on Spotify and Google Podcast.
Hello and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from Washington DC. I'm Nick Harper, and in this bulletin we'll get you a roundup on all the stories developing around the world. First up, the headlines. The International Monetary Fund has lowered China's growth forecast for 2021 to 8% and 5.6% for 2022, while India's growth projection has been increased to 9.5% for the current year and pegged at 8.5% for 2022. G20 leaders hold a virtual summit to discuss Afghanistan's humanitarian and security situation following the Taliban takeover. US President Joe Biden and Indian Prime Minister Modi among world leaders to address the summit. At the virtual G20 summit, the European Union announces a $1.2 billion aid package for Afghanistan to avert a major humanitarian and socio-economic collapse. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un blames the United States for tensions in the peninsula and accuses the South of hypocrisy as he opens an exhibition showcasing his nuclear-armed country's weapons. French President Emmanuel Macron announces a $35 billion plan to re-industrialise the country, saying France should reclaim its crown as a global leader in innovation. For the third time in the last 3 weeks, China's Evergrande Group has missed bond payments, intensifying market fears over the spread of the crisis to other property developers. And the new Superman is bisexual. DC Comics reveals that the Man of Steel will be in a same-sex relationship with Jay Nakamura. We start today with Afghanistan. As worries grow over the looming humanitarian crisis, a special summit of the group of 20 major economies has been convened to discuss Afghanistan. The summit is hosted by Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi. The focus of the meet was on urgent humanitarian support for the Afghan population, the fight against terrorism and concerns over security. Also looking at ways to guarantee safe passage abroad for thousands of Western allied Afghans still stuck in the country. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also joined the summit, underlying the central role given the body in tackling the crisis in the country. Guterres had earlier said that a massive UN aid operation was underway in a race against time as winter approaches. The UN chief also called for a major injection of liquidity into the Afghan economy. He, however, added that this should not be channeled through the Taliban. Responding to Guterres' call, the European Union said that it would give an additional €700 million in emergency aid to Afghanistan and to its neighbours. This pledge takes the total commitment of new funding to €1 billion, after the EU's earlier promise of €300 million. US President Joe Biden and India's Prime Minister, among the Europe's G20 leaders, also are attending the meeting. However, Chinese President Xi Jinping skipped the crucial G20 meeting. China has publicly demanded economic sanctions on Afghanistan to be lifted and for billions of dollars in Afghan international assets be unfrozen and handed back to Kabul. Afghanistan's neighbours, Pakistan and Iran, were not invited to the virtual meet. But Qatar, which has played a crucial role as an interlocutor between the Taliban and the West, was part of the talks. Qatar said that the world must not rush into giving legitimacy to the new rulers of Afghanistan. The virtual summit comes just days after senior US and Taliban officials met in Doha for their first in-person meeting since the US withdrawal. Next, the 2016 US presidential election was surely one of the most extraordinary political events in recent American history. The world watched as America it had never seen before suddenly came before its eyes. The months-long frenzied election campaign was marred by lurid controversies, and the world of political theatre got introduced to a Republican businessman turned politician, Donald Trump, who stood against a seasoned politician and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The 2016 election is, of course, now history, but will we see a repeat of 2016 in 2024? Perhaps. In a recent interview with the ABC News Network, Hillary Clinton was asked if there's any chance of her coming back to mainstream politics in America. This is what she had to say.
We are grateful for all that has been done. But we have to do.
Any interest at all in getting back into the game of politics?
I will never be out of the game of politics.
Well, the former First Lady said that she will never be out of the game of politics. But she followed it up by saying that there are currently no plans for her to run for any office. Hillary Clinton believes that she will remain in the political world even without mounting a bid for public office. Before running for the 2016 presidency as the Democratic candidate, Hillary Clinton served as the Secretary of State under President Barack Obama. She was the Democratic senator for the state of New York and, of course, the First Lady during her husband Bill Clinton's tenure as president. Her former opponent, Donald Trump, has already hinted at a possible 2024 run, and it could easily turn out to be a serious consideration, since he continues to hold a position of considerable influence within the Republican Party.
Yes, 100%. And the polls show it, and everybody wants me to do it. 100% I'm thinking about running.
The 2016 presidential contest filled the American atmosphere with thick insults and constant ugly verbal fights. America's 2-year process of electing a new leader is one of the most elaborate of any Western democracy, and the Trump versus Hillary war lasted for months. It was one of the most exhaustive and personal fights.
I call it trumped up trickle down, because that's exactly what it would be.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted.
But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust. Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump is making his comeback bid, and in his crosshairs is the leader of his own Republican Party. Trump has accused Senator Mitch McConnell of lacking the courage to challenge the results of the 2020 presidential election, which Trump lost to Joe Biden. Trump's attacks didn't stop there. The former president added that the only reason McConnell is still a Republican Party leader is that he raises a lot of money and gives it to Republican senators.
The belief that a nation must serve its citizens will not dwindle, but instead only grow stronger by the day. As long as the American people hold in their hearts deep and devoted. But one of the first things they did when Mitch McConnell said, we have to get back to business, Mitch McConnell should have challenged that election, because even back then we had plenty of material to challenge that election. He should have challenged the election. Schumer would have challenged the election. But Mitch McConnell didn't have the courage to challenge the election. He's only a leader because he raises a lot of money and he gives it to senators. That's the only thing he's got. That's his only form of leadership. He should have challenged the election.
Trump also repeated his claim that he actually won the November 3rd presidential elections. He also offered a withering critique of his Democratic successor, Joe Biden's first 9 months in office. It was Trump's first time back in Iowa since the 2020 presidential election. Iowa is the state that traditionally kickstarts the nominating process for presidential candidates. Trump has hinted at a possible presidential run in 2024.
We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. God bless you. Thank you, Iowa. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon. Thank you.
But Trump's flirtation with another run could freeze the Republican field for 2024, as other potential candidates try to decide whether they will have to compete against the controversial.
Happened last time, remember?
The 2024 elections will potentially put 75-year-old Donald Trump in the race to the White House as he approaches the age of 80. The question is, will there be any opposition to Trump within the Republican Party? A few days ago, Trump had rubbished any opposition in the GOP, saying most of the candidates will drop out of the race. Next today, the leader of nuclear-armed North Korea, Kim Jong-un, has blamed the United States for tensions in the Korean peninsula. Kim Jong-un has defended Pyongyang's weapons program. He claims it's necessary in the face of hostile United States and a military build-up in South Korea. Ironically, Kim Jong-un made these comments standing in front of a variety of weapons, including Pyongyang's nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile.
Standing beside North Korea's largest missiles, leader Kim Jong-un defended his country's weapons development on Monday. State media carried comments from Kim saying it was necessary to increase the North's military for self-defense in the face of hostile policies from the US and South Korea. Kim made the comments in his speech at the Defense Development Exhibition on Monday, according to a report by state news agency KCNA. Photos in the ruling party newspaper showed Kim standing next to the country's largest intercontinental ballistic missiles that have been unveiled but not yet test-fired. A spokesperson for South Korea's defense ministry said they were monitoring the situation closely. South Korea recently test-fired its first submarine-launched ballistic missile and has bought American-made F-35 stealth fighters. North Korea has pushed ahead with its missile program And analysts say it has begun a major expansion of its main nuclear reactor for fuel for nuclear weapons. The US has said it is willing to hold diplomatic talks at any time with Pyongyang.
A former Chinese police officer has turned whistleblower and exposed the Chinese Communist Party's Xinjiang cover-up. His claims have created waves in the power corridors of Beijing and Xinjiang. Communist Party officials have now been forced to acknowledge and address the explosive claims made by one of their own.
听完这名自称在这个新疆当警察的这个男子这个描述的情况，我只想说这个4个字，这个变得太。
Claims by this former Chinese police officer turned whistleblower have confirmed what the world has long believed. Known only as Zhang, the whistleblower says Uyghurs in so-called re-education camps in Xinjiang are not treated as humans. He said deaths are common in these camps for minorities. He confirms that there are nearly 900,000 people being detained in these camps by the Communist Party. Many have been detained for just saying the wrong things.
I was in the China Communist Public Security Criminal Investigation Department for 10 years.
The whistleblower has detailed the plight of Uyghur minorities in China. He asserts that when detainees are transported to the camps by freight train from other parts of China, they're not allowed to eat or go to the toilet and are only given water from bottle caps.
暂时管制这种状态了，然后我也只知道这么多。但是我到那时候，他已经有90多万人，就是因为各种各样的问题、小问题，诸如就是我说错话，各种各样的问题，我就是为了控制他，把他都送到上级命令。没有什么证据，有什么证据啊？这个东西需要什么证据啊？当时把乌鲁木齐户口不在那个本地的人全部给送回本地，然后呢，比如说全国各地没有这个许可的人，都在火车押运途中不给他们食物喝水呢，只给他们提供这个用瓶盖。
He adds once Uyghurs reach the camps, detainees are routinely subjected to severe physical ill-treatment and abuse. He claims sometimes the detainees are beaten to death by Chinese security officials.
用棍子压他腿，2个人，然后把着他，然后踩他的胳膊呀，用手铐的虎口往桌子上拍呀，灌凉水啊，就是把水管子插到这个嘴里把他绑起来呀，然后其他还有一些别人独特喜欢的都不同，这种方法特别多。如果出点意外的话，不像正常一个人死几个人，死一些人呢，那是很正常的了。我这个全部都是站在这个原来这种角度，因为我习惯于这么说了。
Despite the testimony from this former Xinjiang cop, China continues to deny all allegations of human rights abuse.
第二个呢是这个新疆的教培中心，严格的贯彻落实中国宪法和法律，关于尊重和保障人权的基本原则，充分的保障学生的人格权利呢不受侵犯，严禁以任何方式对学员进行人格侮辱和这个虐待，绝不可能发生这名自称在新疆当这个警察的男子呢描述的这种情况。
A United Nations report has claimed that nearly 1 million Uyghurs are being held by China in these camps. Calls are also growing for a diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics to be held in China in 2022. Various international companies like H&M and Nike had also boycotted Xinjiang cotton over reports of human rights abuse. The United States, Canada and the Netherlands have all accused China of committing genocide. Next, 34 years after the assassination of Burkina Faso's former president, Thomas Sankara, the trial of 14 people accused of plotting the killing has started. Sankara, a Marxist revolutionary who was also widely known as Africa's Che Guevara, was killed in 1987 during a coup. The military tribunal opened the proceedings but adjourned the hearing until October the 25th, after defence lawyers sought more time to prepare their case.
It was one of the most infamous killings in modern African history, the gunning down of Burkina Faso's charismatic president Thomas Sankara in 1987. And on Monday, the trial of 14 people accused of plotting that assassination got underway in the capital, Ouagadougou. Among those in attendance, Sankara's widow, Mariam.
Like everyone else in Burkina Faso, we are waiting for the truth to come out. So today is the day that begins, and we hope and wish that the truth will come out.
Sankara was a Marxist revolutionary widely known as Africa's Che Guevara. Aged 33, he seized power in a 1983 coup, with promises to tackle corruption and the dominance of former colonial powers. But in 1987, he was killed. That was during a coup led by his one-time ally Blaise Compaoré, who was the main defendant in the trial. The former president has always denied involvement in Sankara's death and lives in exile in Ivory Coast, having been ousted in 2014. He was charged in absentia in April with complicity in the murder. Also charged in April was his right-hand man, General Gilbert Diendere. He's among the 12 out of 14 accused who are appearing at the military tribunal. They have all pleaded not guilty. One other defendant, Compaoré's former head of security, Hyacinth Kafando, is also being tried in his absence.
Now, have you ever wondered what impact extreme weather conditions have on the human body, or how the body interacts with the environment during high-altitude acclimatization, or in freezing cold conditions? Well, an Italian research centre is conducting multiple such experiments to study the impact of extreme climate conditions on organisms and objects in highly controlled simulations. Here's our report.
This duo of mountain rescuers here is carrying out emergency procedures. In blizzard conditions, the only catch, they are actually in a chamber that can mimic the freezing blizzard-like conditions. These climatic chambers at the Italian Research Center are carrying out studies and experiments to record the impact of extreme climate conditions on technology, humans, and other biological organisms. The climate here is generated as per the requirements of the study in these highly controlled chambers. From blizzards to scorching heat waves, if you can name it, it can be recreated here.
TEREX Cube is a center for simulations of extreme climate conditions. In these rooms, we can reproduce in a systematic and replicable way environments that have extremely low temperatures from -40 degrees Celsius to up to 60. And in terms of altitude, we can go up to 9,000 meters. We can combine the wind, the snow, the rain, and all these conditions to create an extreme environment where we can put subjects that need to be analyzed. For example, people. Do studies on people. We have an entire research department that studies these phenomena on people. And we can also introduce objects. And what is most interesting is to combine these two things, having people use these objects in extreme conditions.
These chambers offer a space to find solutions to climate change. The effects of high altitude acclimatization on the body, the impact it has on increasing blood thickness, as well as the effect on blood's capacity to carry oxygen. The research center has been conducting a wide variety of tests. Not just that, even private companies seem to be reaping the benefits, as they have employed this technology to test out their products.
We did some defrosting tests on big machines. These are cabins where people have to be inside. We defrosted them in a cold environment, and the test was to understand how fast the glass of this cabin can be defrosted. The results were excellent for the client as well, and we were able to demonstrate that this glass has a great performance.
The chambers are equipped with video cameras and sensors, which help collect all the data. The goal is simple: to understand the impact of different climatic conditions on a human.
In these rooms, we can accelerate time or expose biological organisms, which can be plants or even other small organisms, to extreme climate conditions, in terms of temperature, altitude, humidity, and so on, to understand how these behave with climate changes. One example is that currently plants grow at certain altitudes. With climate changes, these parameters change, and we can reproduce that artificially here in an accelerated way. So researchers can carry out these tests here and see the effects without having to go out, without putting themselves in danger and within the amount of time they need.
Researchers hope that these experiments can help us understand how to care for our environment a little better and to find accelerated solutions to extreme climate conditions and climate change. Bureau Report WION, World is One.
Well, that's all we've got time for today. Thanks, as always, for watching. I'm Nick Harper, live in Washington, D.C.
There are many other...